All right, we are live. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us at our second Judicial Town Hall for ICAN Nevada. For those of you who are unfamiliar with ICAN, we are the Israeli American Civic Action Network, founded in 2018 to bridge a growing divide between American policymakers and Israel. Our unique approach joins Israeli immigrants with American supporters to lead grassroots advocacy efforts for a better America, a more secure Israel, and a stronger U.S.-Israel alliance. Tonight, I am very pleased to have ICAN Nevada Chair, Sigal Chattis. Sigal, you want to say a few words?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. It's good to see everybody here tonight. Some of you I know, some of you I'm looking forward to get to know. So with that, let's kick it off, and good luck to everybody.
Thank you, Sigal. All right. And I'm also pleased to add in Mr. Milan Chatterjee, ICAN Nevada Vice Chair. Milan, thank you. And I will let you take it from here.
Thank you very much, Dylan. Good evening, friends. My name is Milan Chatterjee, and I'm honored to be the Vice Chair for ICAN Nevada. Along with being an ICAN Vice Chair, I'm a lawyer based here in Las Vegas, Nevada. We have judicial elections coming up on June 9th. We have a primary election. And then on November 3rd, we're going to have the general election. So tonight, we're honored to have 7 candidates, most of who will be up for the primary, and some won't be facing a primary challenge, but they'll definitely be up for the general election. And this is a very good opportunity for the Israeli American community of Nevada to get to know our judicial candidates. We have over 10,000 Israeli Americans in Nevada, most of them based in Clark County, and every vote counts. So we're very honored to have 7 candidates today to share their backgrounds, their interests, their philosophies, to better educate the voters so that they can place an informed vote. So let me start out by introducing our distinguished candidates. Our first candidate is Judge Douglas W. Herndon. He's a candidate for Nevada Supreme Court Seat D, and he's currently a district court judge for the 8th Judicial District Court, Department 3. Our second candidate is Judge Bonnie A. Bulla. She's seeking re-election to the Nevada Court of Appeals. Our third candidate is Mr. Carl Armstrong. He's a candidate for District Court Judge for Department 23 of the 8th Judicial District Court. Our fourth candidate is Mr. Mickey Bond. He's a candidate for District Court Judge for Department 24 of the 8th Judicial District Court. Our fifth candidate is Miss Margaret Pickard. She's a candidate for Family Court Judge for Department V of the 8th Judicial District Court. Our sixth candidate is Miss Dawn Throne. She's a candidate for Family Court Judge of Department U of the 8th Judicial District Court. And our seventh candidate is Judge William Voy. He's seeking re-election for Family Court Judge for Department A of the 8th Judicial District Court. So we're very lucky to have these 7 wonderful candidates with us, a lot to get on with. So let me start out with our first question, and we'll have Judge Herndon to start us on. So for the judicial candidates, starting with Judge Herndon, please tell us about yourself and why you're running for your respective seat.
Can you hear me?
Now we can, yes.
All right, great. Thank you. Sorry about that. First off, Milan, thank you very much, as well to Sigal and Dylan, all of you all and your hard work for putting this together and giving us an opportunity to have this forum to chat about ourselves a little bit and let your viewers learn a little about us. I've been in Nevada for 30 years now. My wife and I have been together for 34 years since we met in college. We moved to Nevada after I got out of law school. I went to law school in Virginia, and she was working in DC for her congressman, and then we moved out here. When we first got here, one of the things I noticed immediately was how embraced and supported we were by the people of Nevada, and that was very impactful on me. And it led me to decide way back then to pursue a career in public service. So I served in the district attorney's office for 14 years, where I ran the special victims unit, and I've been a district court judge now for 15 years. A chief judge for 11 years, and I currently run our homicide case team. I'm running for the Supreme Court for a variety of reasons, one of which I just alluded to, which is I try every day to reward the faith and trust of the people of this state, which impressed me so much and caused me and my wife to put our roots down and raise our family here. I think that's very important. I also believe that When you enter public service, you have an obligation and a responsibility to take what you've been blessed with in terms of your talents and your skills, couple that with the mentorship you go through in learning more talents and skills, and continue to find ways to serve. I've been very proactive as a judge in creating efficiencies within our court system, and I'm confident I can do that with the Supreme Court and be a valuable member there as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Judge Herndon. Now we have Judge Bulla.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. I'm Judge Bonnie Bulla of the Nevada Court of Appeals. Governor Sisolak appointed me last year to the court after I had gone through a fairly rigorous selection process through the Nevada Judicial Selection Committee or Commission. A little bit about myself is that I am a desert rat. I grew up in Tempe, Arizona. I attended Arizona State University. I received my degree in economics, and I was Phi Beta Kappa and summa cum laude. And then I went to law school at Arizona State and graduated in 1987 and immediately moved to Nevada, where I passed the bar in 1987. So I've been here for 32 years. So Nevada is my home. I was in private practice about 19 years. I primarily handled professional negligence cases. I was AV rated, which is the highest rating from Martindale-Hubbell. And then after that, for 12 years, I was the discovery commissioner for the 8th Judicial District Court. So I resolved the pretrial discovery disputes that the attorneys brought before me. And in that capacity, I would make decisions as to what documents an attorney could obtain or what witnesses they could speak to. And in my 12 years as discovery commissioner, I learned to solve thousands of different types of problems and really enjoyed that as well. And then Governor Sisolak appointed me to the Court of Appeals. I am running to retain my seat this November, and I'll be specific about it. I'm running to complete the term that the governor appointed me to. After that, I will run for my own term, hopefully, if I'm successful in 2022, and that would be a 6-year term. After that, as I told the governor, I am not a spring chicken, so I think that will probably be it. But I love being on the Court of Appeals. It is a wonderful opportunity. I enjoy serving the people of Nevada. And again, it's just such a pleasure to be here this evening with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Bulla. Now we have Mr. Carl Armstrong.
Thank you. My name is Carl Armstrong, and I'm running for a district court judge in Department 23. I haven't been here quite as long as Bonnie. I've been in Las Vegas for about 30 years. I came here in 1990, and my first job was working for the first African-American district court judge, Judge Adler D. Guy. After that, I also worked for Judge Lord. I presently have been a lawyer for about 32 years because those first 2 years after my graduation from law school, I served in the public defender's office in Chicago. So I came out here from Chicago, where I met my wife of 25 years, and I have 3 sons, and they grew up in the public school systems here. So I have roots here. I'm a homeowner here, and basically I spent most of my legal career here. I've been a public defender. I've been a prosecutor in workers' comp fraud through the Attorney General's office. I've been a person doing inmate litigation through the Attorney General's office, as well as doing habeas matters in terms of federal and state court trials for the Attorney General's office. After that, I went to the university system and did pretty much the same kind of work, with the exception of representing inmates in terms of the system of higher education for the state of Nevada. So I represented the institutions there. I also have been a civil practitioner in terms of doing insurance defense for both State Farm Insurance as well as Travelers Insurance, where I spent 14 years. Presently, I am an appeals officer for the state of Nevada. I was honored to be appointed to that position for the last 4 years by Governor Sandoval. And what I do is I adjudicate workers' compensation appeals. I've pretty much been serving Nevada for the 30 years I've been here. I've served on both lawyer discipline panels and I presently serve on the Nevada Commission on Judicial Discipline, which I've served for 18 years. I want to continue to serve, and that's the reason why I want to be your district court judge in Department 23. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. Mr. Mickey Bond.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Oh, my camera's a bit off. My name is Mickey Bone. My family moved to Las Vegas 50 years ago in 1970 when I was 11 years old. My 61st birthday was just a week ago. I went to junior high and high school here. I joined the Boy Scouts. I became an Eagle Scout. We didn't have a law school in Las Vegas at the time. I moved away to California, where I went to college and to law school. And when I graduated to law school, I came back to Las Vegas in January 1984. My first job was working as a clerk for Michael Cherry. And just a few months later, I was fortunate enough to get a job as a law clerk for Judge Miriam Shearing. It's there that I saw just how important the job of judge was and how important it was. And I realized that I could do this kind of job, but only after I had the right experience. Well, I've been practicing now for the experience under my belt. I've handled thousands of clients. I've been in court probably over 10,000 hours. I've appeared before over 100 judges. I've handled over 100 trials. I've handled 300 appeals and in 19 reported decisions from the Nevada Supreme Court, which is binding case law now. And I've also been a court-appointed arbitrator for over 25 years. In comparison, the other candidates for Department 24, none of them practiced for more than 17 years, so I've got more than twice the experience of anyone else. I've also had my own firm now for over 23 years, and I have a second business, Nevada Trust Deed Services, where we do non-judicial foreclosures. So I'm very familiar with real estate law and HOA law, and the appeals I've handled are a wide variety of issues, including constitutional law, real estate law, trial evidence, privileges, personal injury, workers' comp, defamation, legal malpractice, and medical malpractice. So this wide diversity of issues I'm familiar with would make me a good judge for Department 24. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bone. Next, we have Ms. Margaret Pickard.
Hi, everybody. My name is Margaret Pickard, and I currently serve as a hearing master overseeing cases in child abuse and neglect in courtroom 14 at Family Court. There are 6 new seats in the Family Court beginning in 2021, and one of those seats is the current court that I sit in. I also, in 2014, have been very active in our family law community. In 2014, Nevada family law attorneys and judges throughout the state elected me to serve on the Nevada State Board's Family Law Executive Council. There, I served as a co-editor of the Nevada Family Law Report and also on the Child Witness Committee, developing practices and procedures for children who were testifying in court proceedings. I've been very involved as a parenting coordinator and also a family court mediator. In 2011, I was elected as a Peacekeeper of the Year by the Mediators of Southern Nevada. I absolutely am committed to not only our family court, but our community as a whole. My husband and I have volunteered hundreds of hours with our youth in our communities, working with issues of addiction and recovery. We are true community servants. I am committed to family court, and I hope that you will vote for me for Department B and Family Court, where I currently sit, serving our community. Thanks so much, Milan.
Thank you, Ms. Pickard. Now we have Ms. Dawn Throne.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate your time. My name is Dawn Throne. I am a family court practitioner. I first came to Nevada in 1993 and helped my grandparents retire here. And then I went to law school at the University of Arizona in Tucson, and then came back here in 1995 to do a summer clerkship and fell in love with the practice of law here in Las Vegas. I have mostly done family law for the last 15 years. It's been only family law. I am one of 48 family law specialists in the state of Nevada. And being in the trenches with my clients, as well as I've been divorced myself. I am a mother of a 14-year-old. I've helped raise 2 stepchildren, and I know what it's like to be in family court and be afraid. I also know what it's like when you have a good family court judge who has the knowledge, the experience, the compassion to help people get through their family law matter in an efficient manner. I've represented hundreds of clients in all different walks of life, all different financial backgrounds, the most complicated divorces, to a simple child custody matter where they have just their child and access to their child to fight about. So I decided to run for family court judge because I know what it takes to be a good family court judge and what damage somebody who's not qualified to be there can do to families in Clark County. It is a very busy court and you have to be efficient. And I'm committed to treating people with dignity, fairness, letting them be heard, and efficiently moving their matter through there, as long as also giving them the ability to resolve their case themselves. There's tools that the judges can do to help them make their own decisions regarding custody, to try to help them settle their financial issues, and if need be, then the judge makes the decision. I am on your primary ballot, and I'd appreciate your vote. Family Court Department U, Dawn Throne.
Thank you, Ms. Throne. And now we have Judge William Voigt.
Good evening. Thank you for having this time for us tonight. Really appreciate it. I'm William Voigt. I'm the current judge in Department A, Family Court. I moved here in 1989. I graduated from law school in 86. I did my 3 years of military service as a JAG in Washington, D.C. Moved here to make Nevada my home and Clark County my home. I've been here ever since. I started private practice, was in private practice until 1998, and I was selected by Governor Bob Miller to fill a vacancy on the family court bench in Department A, which I've currently held that position ever since. And in 2004, I was selected by, well, actually prior to that, I was selected by my colleagues to serve as the juvenile delinquency court judge for Clark County, and been serving that capacity since then. I would like to be able to continue in that capacity to serve the citizens of Clark County. I was instilled early on in my life with a strong sense of community service. Like I said, I moved from private practice into the judiciary because I felt that I was better suited for that area of the law rather than the pure advocacy mode that we normally find ourselves in. At this point in time, I would like to be able to continue serving the citizens of Clark County, both in the delinquency and the dependency side of the cases here in Clark County. I think my computer, there we go. We're back again. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No, I appreciate the opportunity to be, to continue to serve in that capacity. I have my wife and my child are here. I have a 9-year-old son who goes to Clark County School District and participates in the school, very active in working with the school district and developing alternatives to our standard forms of discipline that we have in the school district, and developing best practices here in Clark County. And I'd like to continue in that capacity. And I appreciate your consideration here in the primary on June 9th, but also in the general election. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Judge Voigt. Well, it was very nice to get a good introduction of the 7 candidates. I'm going to move on to our next question. Please describe your involvement in the Nevada community. All of our candidates have been in Nevada for a good portion of their life. They've been active citizens. So we would appreciate a little better knowledge about your involvement in the Nevada community. A humble respect to all candidates. Please try to keep your answers to about 1.5 minutes. Would appreciate it so we can make sure all candidates get ample time. So Judge Herndon, please tell us about your involvement in the Nevada community.
So remember, Milan, you're talking to a lot of lawyers when you tell us to keep it to 1.5 minutes. That's kind of difficult.
Right?
I'll talk about 2 things. First off, I've been involved in a lot of different organizations in the community for the 30 years that I've been here. And every one of them has been very meaningful because they've all provided really great learning opportunities. My wife and I have 2 daughters. I got involved in coaching youth soccer, both at the recreation and then at the club level for about 10 years, coached club softball as well. Been involved in teaching at the Rape Crisis Center for 22 years. I'm actually the oldest tenured employee there, although they never give me a paycheck. I'm just a volunteer. But I got involved with them back when I was first getting involved with the Special Victims Unit when I was an attorney at the District Attorney's Office. I've worked with Opportunity Village, the Shade Tree Shelter. My wife was the liaison with the National Charity League for the Shade Tree Shelter for a couple of years. Safe Nest, and well, a couple of other things that are less about me, but I've been involved with Girl Scouts as well. My youngest daughter is a Girl Scout Gold Award winner, and my wife is on the board of Girl Scouts of Southern Nevada. And we're both on the board together for the Meadows School Board of Trustees. I have a great appreciation for educational opportunities for kids and what it provides to them moving forward. But my biggest thing that I'm most passionate about is I started a mock trial project about 10 years ago with fourth graders, 8th graders, and high school students, trying to teach people about the justice system at a very young age. I thought it was very important that kids begin to see actual court cases and then get to put on their own mock trials. And that's been really successful. We've spread it to the Clark County School District through Project Real Education About the Law, to some of the at-risk schools. I wrote all the scripts for it, and they're now being used in California and Virginia as well. And then I've been involved with the trial advocacy program, judging trials for the law school for a little over 10 years as well. So I enjoy having that opportunity to kind of teach kids about the justice system in a way that's very easy for them to understand.
Perfect. Thank you, Judge Herndon. Next, we have Judge Bulla.
Community service is so important, not just because it helps others, because it also allows you personal self-growth. I've tried to be active in my community in many different ways since being in Nevada. I'm the past president of the Howard D. McKibben chapter of the American Inns of Court. I also was the past president of Southern Nevada Association of Women Attorneys. I am committed to education, and I have given a number of continuing legal education courses throughout my time, both as Discovery Commissioner and last year as a judge on the Nevada Court of Appeals. I've judged moot court competition. I was involved with We the People competition. I was involved in trial by peers. I also was fairly active in a faith-based organization that did outreach to the homeless and to the economically disadvantaged. So I've worked to try to give back to my community. And if you'd like to know a little bit more about some of the things I've done, please feel free to look at my website, judgebonniebulla.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Judge Bulla. Mr. Armstrong.
During the 30 years that I've been in Las Vegas is I started out, when I first got here, I decided that ethics was extremely important to me. So I served 12 years as a member of the Southern Nevada Disciplinary Board. So that's the board that disciplines lawyers. Then in 2001, I decided that, well, what about judges? So at that particular point in time, what I've done is I've been a member of the Nevada Commission on Judicial Discipline as an attorney member for the South for the past 18 years. So that's the panel that disciplines judges. So that's one of the things that I've done in terms of my community service. My job at this particular point is community service because I've been an appeals officer for the state of Nevada for the past 4 years. And what that job entails is adjudicating workers' comp appeals for people that have workers' comp cases in the state of Nevada. So basically, I basically run a courtroom, and basically we hear record appeals for everyone. We decide motions, we sign orders, we do all the things that a court does, but in an administrative sense. Some of the boards and commissions that I've been on is presently, I've spent some time as both the chairman and member as the board of directors of East Seals, Nevada. I've spent time as a member of the board of directors of not of Easter Seals, but the Boy Scouts of America. I've also spent time as a board member for Big Brothers Big Sisters of Nevada. These are the organizations that were near and dear to my heart and the things that I want to give back to our community, because my belief is that everything you do reflects upon what you do for your community. And it's not just you're honored to be in the positions that you are as lawyers, as people that deal with justice, but at the same time, I think that giving back to the community is a requirement that we have to do as lawyers and as people as part of this community. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. We have Mr. Mickey Bone.
Hello again. Again, I'm Mickey Bone. I've lived in Las Vegas for 50 years. As I said, as a young man, I joined the Boy Scouts, became an Eagle Scout, but since I returned 36 years ago, I've been involved in a number of matters. My wife volunteered at Nathan Adelson Hospice, and I volunteered with her also. She's been an employee there now for over 10 years. In the legal side of things, I was on the State Bar of Nevada Fee Dispute Committee hearing fee disputes between attorneys and their clients for over 15 years. I was also on the Disciplinary Committee for attorneys. I was also on the Judicial Discipline Committee for judges for a number of years. Recently, I discovered through the Henderson Chamber of Commerce a foundation called Serving Our Kids. And they put together bags of snacks and food for children to take home for the weekend to help keep them from getting hungry. I discovered them just earlier this year, just before the COVID hit. And my wife and I, every other week or so, will make our way down to Sam's Club or Costco and fill up our trunk with a lot of food and bring it down to them to hand out to the kids. Also, I have a gentleman who works for me. I've known him for 20 years. He's worked for me 15 years. His daughter was born with a number of birth defects, and I've been involved in the Children's Heart Foundation, organizing fundraisers and marches and donating to that cause also. So that's my involvement in the community.
Thank you, Mr. Bone. Now we have Miss Margaret Pickard.
Thank you, Milan. I am very involved in our community in many ways, and I have been for many years since I moved here in 2003. From 2003 to 2015, I taught at UNLV, and I worked and developed a cooperative parenting program, which is a program that brought in community members who are involved in family court matters to teach them what conflict does to children and to help parents parent their children and help them make it through very stressful situations like divorces. The second thing that I'm very proud that I've been involved is the addiction recovery program. I have worked in over hundreds of programs. My husband and I have done hundreds of community presentations that talk about the effects of addiction, why children get involved in addiction, and what we as family members and community members can help these kids in order to get out of the cycle that they're in. I've also been extremely involved in the Keeping Kids in School program that I run for the family court currently. It's a program that we have in 50 Clark County and charter schools throughout the state, throughout the Clark County area. What we do is we work with schools who have very high-risk populations, and we work with keeping those kids in school and attending on a daily basis. I believe that as a judicial officer, we have a responsibility to be very involved in our community, not only speaking at graduations, working with our community events on a weekly basis, but also being examples to our community members around us. So I'm very thankful that I've had this opportunity to reach out to our community, and I absolutely intend to be very involved in the community of Las Vegas and the Henderson area. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Pickard. Now we have Ms. Dawn Throne.
Thank you. Most of my volunteer work has been with youth. I enjoy spending time with the young people. I've been on the scouting committee when my stepson was a Boy Scout, and I enjoyed going camping with them and teaching them life skills, including helping them get merit badges for their shotgun and rifle and et cetera, and going to scout camp. And I'm currently involved in my congregation in choir and in teaching young children. I teach girls between the ages of 8 and 11. I have been for more than 15 years a fee dispute arbitrator for the State Bar of Nevada. I also serve on the Southern Nevada Discipline Committee, and I am currently the vice chair of the Nevada Child Support Guideline Review Committee. We just spent numerous hours over the last couple of years rewriting the guidelines and formula for calculating child support in Nevada, and we're still working on that. We didn't complete that work. It's a work in progress. And lastly, I've spent years advocating for children who have IEPs in school. And I've developed an ability to mentor my clients that also have children in the system who have IEPs and helping them advocate for their children to get what they need. And I really enjoy that teaching other parents what they can do to stand up for their children and make sure they're getting the services that they need.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Thrun.
Thank you.
Thanks. Judge William Voy.
There you are. Okay. Hi. Okay. 1.5 minutes. We're ready. So let me focus on what I've been doing for the last 17 years. When I took over as a juvenile court judge here in Clark County, our charge and what I was held responsible for was helping to develop diversionary programs and other community-based programs to keep kids from our juvenile justice system. The examples that we've done over the last 17 years while I've been in this position, for example, we started the first sexually exploited youth calendar for sexually exploited youth in the nation. We most recently started and established the harbors, which are the juvenile assessment centers that are designed to be able to access 24/7 kids with issues, divert kids from our system, from the Department of Family Services system, and keep them on track and keep them engaged in school. Part of that process has been developing, and we brought to Clark County several years ago the School of Justice Partnership, which is designed to keep kids in school, engaged in school, keep them out of our juvenile justice system. And we know that a safer school is one where kids are engaged and involved in their school. Those are several examples of the stuff that we've been working on in the last several years. But we've been reforming the entire juvenile justice system here in Clark County since I started in 2004. And now at this point in time where we're at, we are at best practices throughout the United States. And I would like to continue in that role. I obviously served on various different commissions and other voluntary work prior to that, but most of the last 17 years, I've been immersed in helping to develop and create the infrastructure to allow the community to help our kids and our community to keep them engaged in school, keep them out of our juvenile justice system, and eventually out of our criminal justice system. And that's probably the most important thing I've been doing for the last many years now.
Perfect. Thank you, Judge Voy. Great. So let's move on to our third question. So for all the candidates, what is your judicial philosophy? How do you approach a case when it comes to your chambers? So let's start out with Judge Herndon, Supreme Court candidate.
Thank you, Milan. So my judicial philosophy is kind of an amalgamation of several things that I have always tried over 15 years to apply to every person in every case on every day. Doesn't really change. And it starts with, I think judges have to be smart enough to recognize, and it sounds simple, but to really recognize and appreciate what our role is. We are not legislators. We are not executive branch officers. We do not represent special interests or get involved in politics. Our job is to interpret and apply law. And when we remember to do that, we do our jobs very well. When we forget to do that, sometimes we don't do our jobs so well. I also think judges would be wise, and I've always been kind of bound by things that Socrates said about judges thousands of years ago. And that is that a judge's job is always to hear courteously, to answer wisely, to weigh things soberly, and to decide impartially. A very simple four-step process of how you should approach things as a judge. I always add to that a need for great humility and work ethic in what we do, as well as independence. And then always, always, always stay open-minded. For 15 years, I never cease to be amazed where it is that I find the nugget of information that's critical to good decision making. You cannot be foreclosed to anything. You have to make sure that you're keeping an open mind throughout everything until it's time to make the decision.
Sounds good. Thank you, Judge Herndon. Judge Bulla.
This is a question that I would just like to answer very simply. My judicial philosophy is to apply the law fairly and in a non-discriminatory manner. I take each case on its merits, and therefore I'm looking at each case individually. And I think it's just important to remember that you have to apply the law fairly. And that's what I try to do.
Sounds good. Thank you, Judge Bulla. Mr. Armstrong.
I guess my judicial philosophy is something that's grown over almost 32 years of practice. One of the things that I find and one of the things that I've seen is that we have to have both humility in terms of the roles that we do because we're public officials, and that it's their courtroom, it's not our courtroom. And we are there to serve the people that come before us. What we have to do is listen to all parties and the concerns that they have, read all the pleadings that they provide, listen to the arguments that they make, and then fairly and equitably apply the law to the arguments made and make a decision as expeditiously as possible so that that party, if they wish, can take the matter to a higher court if they disagree with that decision. That's the role of a judge. A judge is to be impartial. A judge is not supposed to make law. What judges do is act as an umpire in a setting. We're not an advocate for one party or the other. We're not a person that's allowed to put our thumb on the scale to help one party or another. We're supposed to be equal to all parties and make sure that justice is done and everyone is treated fairly and respectfully in all our courtrooms. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. Mr. Mickey Bone.
Yes, thank you. Some very wise things have already been said. I don't think I have anything different or new to add what has been already said. A judge is not an executive or a legislature. Our job is only to interpret and enforce the laws as written. I've always believed that everybody has a story, and in my many years of practice, you know, so people may only come to a courtroom one time. When they come to that courtroom, they want to be treated with respect, they want to be treated fairly, and they have a story to tell, and they want to tell that story. And I intend to have the time and the patience to listen to that story and hear all the facts and arguments and weigh all the law and make a fair and impartial decision as to the best of my ability. And that's my judicial philosophy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bone. Ms. Margaret Pickard.
My judicial philosophy is to apply the law fairly, accurately, and equitably, to interpret the law as written, allow people the opportunity to be heard. Many people come to the court and they just need to tell their story, and they have to have a forum to do that. So it's the opportunity to hear and listen to people who have a story to tell, and then apply the law as written. We are not legislators, as my colleagues have mentioned, and so we are responsible to act with justice and conscience within our decisions in our courtroom. Thanks so much, Milan.
Thank you, Ms. Pickard. Ms. Dawn Throne.
Yes, thank you. I don't have a lot of new thoughts to add to what my colleagues have said, but in family court, the difference is that they're there for a specific purpose. Their family is in crisis and in pain. So I think that a good family court judge balances three things for those people who come to court: is allowing them to be heard. The satisfaction level of the people who come to court is better when they felt they've been heard and treated with dignity and fairness, and then applying the law the same to everyone. And then third is to make decisions efficiently and move the cases through. In family court, they are in pain and their children are suffering. The longer their case drags on through the court system, the more they're fighting with each other. So if you can help them by either making their own decision or making a decision for them and help them move on with their lives and heal, then you've done the best you can for them as a family court judge.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Throne. Judge William Voy.
Yes, the privilege of going last. I'll echo everything that's been said so far, but I don't disagree with anything that's been said. But let me just state that what my late mother said. She was a product of the Depression. Grew up as a dirt farmer in the middle of Kansas with nothing. She raised me with several principles that guide me, and those that you should treat people the way you want to be treated. But more importantly, you're no better than anyone else. I would say what she used to tell me, but it would be inappropriate right now to say that. But, and those guiding principles have been with me, obviously, my entire life and still guide me to this day, that everyone, you're no better than the person sitting next to you or the person standing in front of you. And I think that with the understanding that we have a job to do as judges, but more importantly, we're no better or worse than anyone else. But we're in that position to make that decision. The law says when we get elected, we sit in that position, we have that, that position. But those two principles really have guided me in my entire life and continue to guide me. And that's what I'd like to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Voy. Great. So now we're going to move on to our fourth question. What are the qualities of being a good judge? And we'll start with Judge Herndon.
Well, I think this is perfect that Judge Voy just went, because he gave me a perfect segue into this. I believe that one of the things that's most important about being a good judge is humility. Don't go out and try and become a judge because of some egoistic drive towards having the title or being in charge of a courtroom or anything like that. You have to realize that you are no better than anybody else. You're not the most powerful person in a courtroom, a jury is. And you're on equal footing with the attorneys and the witnesses and everybody else that comes in there. And they all deserve your respect. And we have to realize that all of us are going to make mistakes, the judges included. And you need to own those and be a responsible person and hopefully be a better person and a better judge every day. I think also that good judges have a tremendous work ethic. This is not an easy job to do if you're doing it the right way as a district court judge, an appellate court judge, a Supreme Court justice. It requires a lot of determination and a lot of application of your time to learning about very complex and difficult subjects across a broad spectrum of topics. And it requires a lot of man or woman hours to become proficient at that. I also think that good judges have thick skin. You have to realize you're going to make a lot of unpopular decisions, but you have to have the independence to make those and do it understanding that a lot of people may not like them, but nonetheless, you follow the law and do what's right. And I think it's important that you be respectful. As Bill said a moment ago, you have to treat people with respect and understand that people come to the court to see their grievances aired, and it's the most important thing in their life. It may be one of many cases you have as a judge, but it is the most important thing and the most important moment for that defendant, that victim, that person in a civil lawsuit, that person in family court looking to maintain custody of their children, whatever it may be. And we're the role models for that. So we need to be very professional and respectful.
Perfect. Thank you, Judge Herndon. Judge Bonnie Bulla.
I'm going to answer this question in the context of an appellate court judge. The qualities of a good appellate court judge include the ability to read a lot, because every day you're reading a lot of material.
True.
To write, to edit, and to be able to collaborate. On the appellate level, whether it be the Nevada Court of Appeals or the Nevada Supreme Court, you are working collaboratively together to reach a decision. So you have to be able to communicate effectively the resolution of problems, to be able to work with your colleagues to reach decisions. This is not a 5-day-a-week job. This is a 7-day-a-week job. Emergencies do occur that have to be handled, and you are always working a problem. There is always a problem that must be solved, so it takes hard work and commitment. And it is not an easy job at the appellate level. So you have to be willing to stick with it. And if it doesn't resolve one way, you have to look at the problem a different way. But again, this is for an appellate level judge. But it is essential to have the ability to write and to edit and to enjoy reading, because there is a lot of it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Judge Bulla. Mr. Armstrong.
I think the main thing that you need to have when you're a judge is patience, because everyone that comes into your courtroom, whether they be litigants, whether they be lawyers, or any other party that comes before you, is they're going to sometimes try your patience. What they're going to do is ask you questions, interact with you in a way that maybe sometimes slows the administration of justice. You have to know how to balance listening to people as well as moving cases along. What needs to happen is everybody needs to be heard. Everybody is on the same level as Judge Herndon states, that we're no different than anyone else. We're just the referee. We're not the person that makes a decision one way or another in terms of how something is ultimately resolved. What we have to be is the adult in the room. We have to be the one that makes sure that everyone is heard and justice is done. That's the job that we have. We also have to work longer than 9 to 1. We have to be there 40 hours a week or longer. We have to be there for search warrants. We have to be there for anything that has to happen that deals with our judicial office. We work whenever anyone tells us that we need to work. It's not a situation in which this is a part-time job. This is more than a full-time job, and we have to be willing to commit to that. It also is a lonely job too, because there are times in which some of your friends are going to be cut off from you because of the role you have to be impartial and not do ex-parte communications with other people. So it's not the easiest job to have, but it is the best job to have, I believe, in terms of the public service that you're going to do for the people of the state of Nevada. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. Mr. Mickey Bone.
Thank you. Again, a lot of wise things have already been said that I have to agree with, but patience is very important when you're a judge. As I said earlier, a lot of people, when they walk in the courtroom, it may be the only time in their life where they get to go there. And I've seen people who just want to tell their story. And the other attorneys and judges here, they get on the stand, and no matter what the judge or their attorney tells them, they just want to tell their story and talk and talk and talk. And you have to be patient enough to listen to it. A good judge is well-read. A good judge is someone who is experienced and has the patience to hear all sides of a story. There is a lot of reading that's involved. A lot of people get their impression of a courtroom from what they see on TV and movies and TV shows, and it's nothing what happens in real life. A lot of things that handle in motion calendar the first hour or so a day is a judge hearing preliminary matters leading up to a trial. And a judge will schedule between 3 and 33 things to be heard in the morning. And you have to be read and know what's happening so that when you listen to the attorneys, you can make an informed and fast decision. So patience and hard work, respect for the people coming before you, respect for the people in the community that you are serving are all very important qualities of being a judge. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bone. Miss Margaret Pickard. You're mute.
Apologies. As a judicial officer, I believe that you have to have proficiency in the law and the procedures in the law that you are working in, the area of law you're working in. I also believe you have to have respect. You have to have respect for litigants' time and the attorney's time. You have to have respect for the rights of those people who are appearing before you. And you have to have respect for the needs of our community. And above all, as everybody said, it is a good, hard work ethic. I finished work at 11 o'clock last night, and there are nights that you put that time in because our community and the people who appear before you deserve your true and full commitment. So it's really about proficiency and respect.
Thank you, Ms. Pickard. Ms. Dawn Throne.
Thank you. Been a lot of good answers, but for my experience in family court, you bring to it both a knowledge of the law. You have to have that experience, but also your life experience because of what you are dealing with, and everything, almost everything you deal with has discretion. What is in the best interest of a child? You bring your life experience to that decision. Then there's preparation. As everyone said, this is not a nine to 1 job, and definitely not even a 9 to 5 job if you're doing it right. You prepare. You have to have patience. That's the hardest one. And family court, you're dealing with about 66% of the people are representing themselves. They don't understand the process. They're afraid. And you have to let them have the information on how to get through the process without giving them legal advice. And you have to have a lot of patience to do that. And you have to care about these families, care about their children and helping them through the legal problem so that they can go on and take care of their children. And lastly, you have to be fair to all. You got to avoid even the appearance of favoring a lawyer over a person representing themselves. You have to not appear to be favoring one gender over another, or the people who have money get better results in front of you. You have to treat everyone fairly and make sure there's not even the appearance of impropriety. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thrun. Judge William Voy.
I feel like I'm at a baseball game and I'm coming out of the left field, out of the pitcher's practice area doing cleanup. So let me just add that I wouldn't disagree with anything that's been said here today, tonight. I mean, I would add that amongst all the other things that have been said tonight, common sense. You know, and I encounter that a lot. I mean, the lack thereof. A little common sense to the approach, whether it be a family court case, a juvenile case, an appellate case, maybe not so much appellate, but at the trial level especially. It's that common sense you add to amongst everything else that's been said here today. I'd just like to add that point. And lastly, I'd just like to add that, you know what, because we're asked these questions all the time in all the endorsement interviews and things that we do about how much time do you spend on the bench and blah, blah, blah. Quite frankly, when you become a judge and you're entrusted with that authority and that quite frankly, power that exists as a judge to decide very extremely important decisions for people's lives, you have to exercise that with great restraint. But more importantly, you're a judge 24/7. When people say, oh, what do you do 9 to 5? Well, I do this, this, and this. What about on Saturdays and Sundays? What about at night? Why are you doing this? We forget about that. When you become a doctor and you're lucky enough to become a physician, for example, you're a physician. That's what you do. And when you are lucky enough to be either appointed or elected to the bench as a judge, that's what you do. 24/7. You're on call and everything that goes with it. And I think that's the most important, that amongst everything else that's been said tonight, that's what I'd like to add to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Voy. Great. Now is a good opportunity to get to know our judicial candidates personally. So the last two questions are to a little bit understand who they are as people. So I'd like to move to our fifth question, and this is to all judicial candidates. What would you consider as your greatest strengths and weaknesses? Judge Herndon.
Thank you, Milan. First thing, hey, Bill, you're our closer because you're crushing it, buddy. So every time we bring you out of the bullpen, you're great.
No problem.
You know, my strengths, Milan, I think I would refer back to some of what I referred to as to what I think makes a good judge. To begin with, I don't have any ego about this job. I've had a lot of jobs in my life. I've been working since I was 12 years old. I've done everything from cleaning toilets to buffing floors, stocking shelves, working as a busboy and in construction. And I've learned a lot from every one of those jobs. They've been as meaningful learning experience as being a chief judge has been. So I have a great appreciation for hard work and what I think it means to give people an honest day's work in return for the trust they place in you. And from a work ethic standpoint, one of the things, particularly as a district court judge, you have to be willing to put in the work to make cases effectively and efficiently. Before our pandemic started, I was coming up on having tried almost 300 cases as a district court judge, so about 20 a year. And I believe in being proactive in our case management to get cases through the system. When I created the homicide team in 2017, in the first year we were in business, we saved taxpayers over $1.5 million and nearly doubled the resolution rate of those cases. And it comes from just being willing to do the job and try and do it well and be better every day. From a weakness standpoint, I'm a work in progress with regard to time management. I'm always, struggling a little bit with that, and with kind of understanding not to be overscheduling yourself, because you get involved in too many things and you can't really be good in any of them. So I constantly am kind of trying to refine that.
Perfect. Thank you, Judge Herndon. And our next batter will be Judge Bulla.
Thank you. When I thought about this question, it occurred to me, and I guess I feel this as I get a little bit older, that sometimes what we perceive as strengths can be weaknesses, and what we perceive as weakness can be a strength. I think that there may be lawyers that sometimes think that kindness might be a weakness if it's granting an extension to another party to be able to answer discovery, for example. But I think what I can do in terms of answering this question is to put it in the context of one of my own experiences, which is when I came to the Court of Appeals, I did not have the extensive background in criminal law. I brought a very extensive background in civil law and practice, which was beneficial to the court, I believe. But again, I did not have some of the other practice areas that the Nevada Court of Appeals sees, because we see criminal, civil, as well as family matters. When you know that there is an area that you may not be as comfortable with, one of the things that I try to do is to learn that area. I work extra hard at it. And so for me, if I have a weakness in a legal area, I study it, I research it, I learn it, I find the rules, I read them again and again and again until I make sure that they are correct. And so in the context of strengths and weaknesses, from my experience on the Court of Appeals, there is an example. I think on a personal level, I'm working on getting tougher or thicker skin. I believe it was Judge Herndon who made that comment, because I tend to be sensitive. But I do think when we do recognize our weaknesses, we work hard to overcome them or to address them and to face them. And I think that that is the experience of being a human being. That's who we are as humans. So thank you, Milan.
Thank you, Judge Bulla. Mr. Armstrong.
I thought about this question a lot in terms of both strengths and weaknesses. I think one of my strengths are that I can see a person's case from both sides. I can see the side, what a defendant is thinking or defense counsel is thinking, as well as what a prosecutor is thinking in terms of what's happening, in terms of trying to head off problems in cases and try to move cases along as expeditiously as possible in order to talking with the lawyers, talking with the litigants, to make determinations that need to be made in order to get the case to trial or resolution as quickly as possible. I think one of the areas that possibly, I don't know whether this is considered a weakness, is that I take every case that I deal with, I take it very seriously. I think about all the different permutations. I think about all the possibilities that could possibly be used in resolving a case. That sometimes takes a lot of time. Also, maybe certain of those areas sometimes has a tendency to create red herrings that we don't need to really think about, and we just need to decide the case that is before us. Because I want to make sure that everybody's point of view is heard and considered before an ultimate decision is made. So that may be something in terms of overthinking cases sometimes, but I'm working with that and also working with listening more closely to people to make sure that I understand what they are saying and what they're trying to get across, so that I can put that into the calculus in making a good decision. Those are the things that I deal with in terms of my strengths and weaknesses in terms of what I do in my job every day and my job that I've been doing for the last 30 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. Mr. Mickey Bone.
Thank you. I'm going to talk professionally and personally. Professionally, my biggest strength is my experience. I've been at this for 36 years. I've handled 300 appeals in the Nevada Supreme Court, 19 of which are reported decisions, which are law in the state. And the diversity of the areas of law that I have dealt with in my career, I think is a very good strength. If I was to have a weakness in my professional career, it would be, again, like Bonnie Bulla just said, I am somewhat familiar with criminal law, but I'm not an expert in it. And one of the reasons I'm running for Department 24 is because Department 24 is and has been a civil department. And if I'm elected to Department 24, will probably stay as a civil seat. That's not to say that I may not later be asked to do criminal work, which I happily do, but I do have some criminal background. On a personal level, both my greatest strength and weakness, you could say, is the same thing. I have a very good sense of humor. I try to lighten situations when appropriate, but at the same time, as a judge, you really have to watch what you say and how you react on the bench. There was a story in the paper last week. The Supreme Court reversed a judge who was sentencing a man who got very mouthy with him, and when he went off to jail, the judge said, "Good luck" at the Supreme Court. It sounds like something I would say to him, or he said, "Have fun." So those are my strengths and weaknesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bone. Ms. Margaret Pickard.
Hi. I believe my greatest strengths are my compassion for individuals and my commitment to our community. I really work hard to make sure that we have justice for all and access to justice. In terms of my weaknesses, I think I'm very self-sufficient, so I try to do things on my own. I write my legal decisions from beginning to end, and that's pretty difficult when we have 4 to 5 trials a month. But I believe that people are entitled to that, but it's also extremely time-consuming. I have a difficult time delegating that. But I think my biggest weakness is probably I don't have the thick skin, as Judge Gula talks about, and as Judge Herndon mentioned, we all really need to develop in this job. And so I'm always very self-conscious, and I try to make sure that I always make the best decisions, which I think is a good thing. But I would like to couple that with a thicker skin, absolutely. Thanks so much.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Pickard. Ms. Dawn Throne.
Thank you. I think my biggest strengths are work ethic. I've had to work hard for everything. I'm the first person in my family to ever go to college, let alone go to graduate school of any type and to have a profession. I grew up in a very poor single mother household, and I had to work hard for everything I got. I also care a lot about my clients, about the parties in family court, about the effects of what happens in family court on their children. And I think those are good things. My biggest weakness is, and my law partner would say this, is asking for help. I can be stubborn at times in terms of one time I had a flat tire. Instead of calling AAA, I, in the rain, tried to change it myself and dented my car because I didn't want to ask somebody to help me. And that's important as a professional, knowing what you have to do personally and what can be delegated to other people to be more efficient. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Throne. Judge William Voy.
Thank you. It's starting to get dark in here. I'm sorry. A little dark. The light changed. I think my greatest strength is my commitment to the community, my commitment to the job. During the pandemic and the closure of the courts, we stayed and we continued to keep for example, the juvenile justice system going and moving forward. Sacrifice time with my family to do so. But that, again, that's what we're paid to do. That's what we're elected to do. As far as my greatest weaknesses, got a lot of weaknesses. I mean, I'm an imperfect human being, just like anyone else is. I think my greatest weakness sometimes is that maybe I'm too, I'm too willing to let folks, especially not so much the litigants in front of me, but lawyers and other people that we work with in in my system, the criminal justice system, but also in the other court systems. I mean, sometimes get to the point where you're like, let's try and work together and get this worked out, rather than just saying, you know what, we need to do this, and this is what needs to happen. And we're about to enter that here in Clark County, in the state of Nevada, when the economic crisis is going to hit us and the budget crunches that are going to happen at the county and the state and city levels over the next 6 months to 18 months is going to be tremendous. I went through as the juvenile court judge here in Clark County in 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, going through the crisis that happened and the fiscal impact. And we really need to stress that that is going to be a very important thing that all of our judges are going to have to deal with going forward in this community.
Perfect. Thank you, Judge Voy. Great. And now we're going to move to our final question for all the panelists. Who is your judicial role model and why? I know the question on the screen says models, but because we want to be sensitive to the time, if you can name one judicial role model and why they serve that role, we would appreciate it. Judge Herndon. Judge Herndon, you're on mute.
My apologies. When I first became a judge, I didn't think about anything other than being the best Clark County District Court judge I could be. I know it's easy to kind of look at the greatest U.S. Supreme Court justices, Oliver Wendell Holmes, Earl Warren, Thurgood Marshall, and kind of pull from their philosophies and the way they were. But I just wanted to be the best District Court Judge Douglas Herndon that I could be. So it was more about an ideal than any particular person. And I went to judges that I knew very well on the Clark County District Court bench, Michael Cherry, Stuart Bell, Jennifer Tagliati, David Wall, that had all been very highly rated amongst the attorneys, and tried to learn from them what it was and how they approached the job that would be beneficial to me. And they were very generous with their time. I think I made some good choices. I've been a top-rated judge for 15 years, had the highest performance rating in 2019 in the Review Journal surveys. So I think their mentorship was very instrumental to me, but it was really about the ideal of how to approach life as a judge, how to approach the courtroom, than it was any particular person to role model yourself after.
Perfect. Thank you, Judge Herndon. Judge Bonnie Bulla.
I looked at this question and I thought to myself, as Discovery Commissioner, I served with 32 very fine district court judges. I work with 2 fine judges on the Court of Appeals, and I interact with 7 Supreme Court justices. Please do not make me answer this question because I couldn't pick just one person. I will say this, though. When I was president of the Howard D. McKibben chapter of the INSA Court, I had former Justice Cherry and Justice Douglas on my board, and they were both instrumental in helping me have a wonderful 2 years. Justice Cherry always helped me see the emotional side of an issue and the bottom line problem or issue that we were facing, and Justice Douglas helped me to analyze a problem and solve the puzzle in a very pragmatic way. And I just value both of them so much and the help that they gave me on the board. But it has been a pleasure to work with all of the judges I've served with as Discovery Commissioner, and now that I work with on the Court of Appeals.
Thank you, Judge Bulla. And a number of you have referred to Judge Michael Cherry, or Justice Michael Cherry. He was on the Supreme Court. We are the Israeli-American Civic Action Network, so it would be a good opportunity to acknowledge Justice Cherry's service, not just in our judicial system, but in the Israeli-American community. He was recently honored by the Friends of the IDF, Israeli Defense Forces, at their annual gala. So we're really lucky to have Justice Cherry as an active leader, not just in the judicial community, but also in the Nevada Israeli-American community. Just thought I should put that out there since we are the Israeli-American Civic Action Network. Mr. Carl Armstrong, who is your judicial role model and why?
Well, when I came to Nevada, what happened was I worked for the first Black district court judge, Judge Adler Guy. One of the reasons why I came to Nevada was I was practicing law for criminal law in Chicago. And basically, I wanted to find out what civil law was about and what different areas of law were all about. There also was a question that was nagging in my mind. In practicing law, what I found was that I didn't know exactly how does a judge make a decision? What goes into the calculus in terms of a judge making a decision and coming up with the right decision? And by watching Judge Guy in terms of his work ethic, which was working all the time, courts never closed. Bottom line was that when other people were on vacation, our court doors were always open. That was one of the things I learned from him. One of the other things I learned from him is you have to be prepared. That means that if you don't know everything you need to know about a particular area of law, you need to learn about that area of law. The second thing that you need to do is also be able to ask questions of the attorneys, whether that be in court or whether through written pleadings, to make sure that you understand the issues that are before you. The other thing is that you have to enter into your decisions with some level of kindness, like Bonnie Bueller said, as well as humility and justice, because we're all human beings. So to a certain extent, we have to be able to look at people's human frailties and make determinations as to what we're going to do with those kind of situations. We can't just be considered automatons in terms of making determinations. We have to take our human experiences into account to make determinations as to whether to come up with the right decision. Those are the things that I learned from Judge Guy in terms of trying to come up with the best decision that you can every time. But that takes a lot of preparation, that takes a lot of work, and that takes a lot of soul searching. And that's why he's the person I consider my role model in terms of what it is to be a good judge. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong. Mr. Mickey Bone.
Thank you. It's kind of an unfair question. Like I said earlier, I've appeared before over 100 judges, and I've appreciated a number of them. I'm going to give you 5 names to talk about only one. When I first started, Michael Cherry, he was my father's attorney growing up, so I knew him personally. I worked for Judge Shearing for over a year, was very close with her. Judge Charles Thompson was on the bench when I started practicing, and he was a great mentor to a lot of young attorneys. Stuart Bell, I really appreciated him as a judge because he would just tell it as it is and not pull any punches. And these days, I really appreciate Timothy Williams because he's very friendly and polite and efficient on the bench. But I really appreciated working with Judge Shearing because she really looked at her job as judge as a public service. She came from a well-to-do family. She was married to Stephen Shearing, who's a world-famous eye surgeon. She didn't have to work, but to her, it was a public service, and she took it very seriously, and it made a strong impression on me. And of the 100 or so I've appeared in front of, I'd have to say she is my strongest and most influential role model. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bone. Ms. Margaret Pickard.
I think that's really an evolving question. So early in my career, it was definitely Justice Cherry because he's the one that actually gave me my first break in training the judges across the state in high conflict custody cases. He's the one that encouraged me to apply and go for this position for district court. And then over time, it's been other people who've been influenced me. My most recent, since Lydia Stiglitz has been appointed to the Supreme Court in Nevada, definitely I always ask myself, what would Justice Stiglitz do in this situation? She's firm and she's fair, and both of them they're fun. They have great personalities and great judgment that we can all trust. And those are factors and things and characteristics I hope to bring to the bench as well.
Thank you, Ms. Pickard. Ms. Dawn Throne.
It is a really hard question. I've been practicing here for 23 years. I've seen a lot of very good family court judges, but the one maybe it speaks to me most because I need to emulate his good strengths is Judge Duckworth. We deal with very emotional area law and people get very upset. Sometimes the attorneys get upset. Sometimes there's even fistfights in court, but he never gets ruffled. He has a lot of patience and treats people with kindness, but still makes a good decision and people feel like they've been treated fairly. And I'd like to be able to do that like he does. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Throne. And then we have our distinguished closer, Judge William Voy.
Definitely the closer. Let me just talk about Michael Cherry. Mike was one of the first lawyers I met when I moved here to town. He was a mentor to me as a lawyer. But as far as a judge, I would have to pick Myron Levitt. And the reason why I picked Myron Levitt is this. I knew him and his personal philosophy in life, his value system, his morals. And I watched him over the course of a couple of years issue some decisions that I knew inside him totally went against his moral belief. But he made the right decision, and he made it for the right decisions. It was against his moral belief, but he did it. And to me, that is so important. And of course, I spent a lot of time with Justice Levitt, who's since passed, of course, but that is the most important thing as far as a mentor to me as a judicial officer, was that experience with him and watching him be able to decide cases that I knew inside were tearing him up because he didn't morally agree with it, but it was the right decision to make, and he made it.
Thank you, Judge Voy. Well, that was wonderful. So I'd like,
So Milan, should we just bring back, just to allow everybody to say thank you and good night?
Yep, absolutely.
Bring everybody back in. I'll disappear.
So I'd like to thank all our participants tonight for sharing their backgrounds and beliefs and philosophies with the Nevada communities, particularly the Israeli American community here in Nevada. You've enabled our voters to make a very informed decision on the June 9th primary and also the general election, which will be on November 3rd. We also had a virtual town hall on May 27th. So we hope that was also helpful for our voters in making an informed decision this upcoming election. Again, I'd like to thank all the panelists. Let me call them by name. Judge Herndon, Judge Bola, Mr. Armstrong, running for judge, Mr. Bone, Ms. Pickard, Ms. Throne, and Judge Voy. Thank you very much for giving us your time and educating our community about your backgrounds. And we wish you all the best of luck this upcoming election. Thank you.
Thank you, Milan.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
guys.
Have a great night.